The rain hammered Murphy's diner like bullets against bulletproof glass, each drop exploding against windows that had seen 40 years of Portland storms, but never one quite this fierce. Tyler Brooks sat in his usual corner booth, staring at the plate of eggs toast and hash browns that represented a choice between eating and paying the electric bill on time. Again. His calloused hands wrapped around a coffee mug that had been refilled 3 times by Marie, the waitress who had been watching him skip meals for weeks without saying a word. She understood the mathematics of poverty. Sometimes kindness meant pretending not to notice when someone was drowning. Before we continue, please tell us where in the world are you tuning in from. We love seeing how far our stories travel. Tyler had exactly $11.37 in his wallet. The breakfast cost $8.50. Emma's school lunch account needed $15 by Friday, or she would spend another week eating the free peanut butter sandwiches that made her feel different from her classmates. The electric company had already sent 2 notices. He picked up his fork, then set it down again. Through the diner window he could see construction sites where he had worked before the November weather made outdoor labor impossible. Portland's economy was good if you had skills and connections. It was brutal if you were a 33-year-old widower whose wife died without life insurance, leaving behind medical bills that swallowed 3 years of careful savings in 6 months of desperate treatments that ultimately changed nothing. Tyler loved Emma more than his own life, but love did not pay for winter coats or birthday parties or the small luxuries that made childhood feel normal instead of like an exercise in constant sacrifice. Love did not explain to an 8-year-old why they moved from a house with a yard to a 1-bedroom apartment where she slept on a fold-out couch and pretended not to hear him crying in the shower after she fell asleep. The diner door burst open with such violence that every patron looked up from their morning routines. Wind and rain swept inside, followed by a figure that Tyler initially mistook for a ghost or a hallucination, brought on by too little food and too much stress. A young woman stumbled through the doorway, soaked to the bone, and shivering so violently her teeth chattered audibly across the restaurant. Her long blonde hair hung in wet ropes around a face that was pale with cold and exhaustion. She wore jeans and a thin jacket that offered no protection against November in the Pacific Northwest, and she moved with the careful deliberation of someone operating on the edge of collapse. But what made Tyler's chest tighten with recognition was not her obvious desperation. It was the way she looked around the diner, like someone who had forgotten how to be inside, how to be warm, how to be safe. It was the expression of someone who had been invisible for so long that being seen felt dangerous. Tyler had worn that expression for the first 6 months after Sarah died. The woman approached Marie's station slowly, her movements hesitant and apologetic. Tyler could not hear their conversation, but he could read body language fluently. The woman was asking for something. Marie was shaking her head with genuine regret rather than dismissal. No available tables, maybe, or no way to seat someone without money for food. Tyler watched the woman's face crumble with disappointment and exhaustion. She turned toward the door, preparing to return to whatever storm had driven her inside, and Tyler made a decision that surprised him with its immediacy. He stood up and crossed the diner before his rational mind could list all the reasons why getting involved was a terrible idea. "Excuse me," Tyler said, his voice gentle but carrying clearly through the dinner noise. "I could not help but notice you might need a place to sit out of the storm." The woman turned, and Tyler found himself looking into blue eyes that held the kind of desperation he remembered from his own worst days. Eyes that had cried too many tears recently and expected nothing good from strangers. "I do not have money for food," she said quietly, her voice carrying shame that made Tyler's heart ache. "I just needed somewhere warm for a few minutes." Tyler glanced back at his untouched breakfast, then at Marie, who was watching their interaction with interest. "Would you join me?" Tyler asked. "I ordered more food than I can finish, and I hate eating alone." It was not quite true, but it was not quite false either. Tyler had learned that pride was often the last thing people let go of, and sometimes kindness required creative packaging. The woman stared at Tyler like he had spoken in a language she did not understand. Her eyes moved from his face to his construction worker clothing to his hands that bore the kind of calluses that came from physical labor, and Tyler could see her trying to determine whether this was safety or another kind of danger. "My name is Tyler Brooks," he said, extending his hand in the most non-threatening gesture he could manage. "I am just a guy having breakfast who could use some company on a morning that is too stormy for anyone to be alone." "Diana," she said, after a long pause, shaking his hand briefly. "Diana Whitmore. Nice to meet you, Diana. Would you like some coffee while you decide whether to trust me with your company?" Something about the way Tyler phrased the question, acknowledging her hesitation rather than pressuring her to overcome it, seemed to tip the balance in his favor. Diana followed him back to his booth, moving with the careful grace of someone who had learned to be grateful for small kindnesses, while remaining alert for the moment they might be withdrawn. Marie appeared at their table, immediately coffee pot in hand, and expression carefully neutral in the way that suggested she had plenty of desperate people and understood the delicate dignity required. "Coffee, honey?" Marie asked Diana, who nodded gratefully. "And could you bring another plate?" Tyler asked. "I always order too much food and end up wasteful." Marie disappeared and returned with settings for Diana, transferring half of Tyler's breakfast to her plate without ceremony or comment. Tyler had requested this specific arrangement while Diana was in the bathroom, paying Marie $8.50 for his own meal and quietly asking her to present the food as sharing rather than charity. Tyler ate slowly, giving Diana time to satisfy what was clearly urgent hunger without feeling observed or judged. He made casual conversation about the weather, about Portland's unpredictable November patterns, about anything that did not require personal disclosure, while she focused on food that was probably her first real meal in days. Only when Diana had finished eating and some color had returned to her face did Tyler venture into more substantive conversation. "Are you from Portland originally?" Tyler asked. Seattle, Diana replied, her voice stronger now that she was no longer operating on empty reserves. "I came here about 3 weeks ago." Tyler waited, letting Diana choose how much information to share rather than pressing for details that might feel invasive. "I was working at a gallery." Diana continued slowly, as if testing whether Tyler could be trusted with pieces of her story. "Photography, mostly contemporary local artists. But things got complicated with my business partner, and I needed to leave quickly." Tyler heard carefully chosen words that suggested a story more complex and probably more painful than professional disagreement, but he did not push for clarification. "Have you found work here in Portland?" Tyler asked instead. "Some temporary things," Diana said vaguely. "It has been harder than I expected to establish myself, without references or a permanent address." Tyler nodded, understanding exactly what Diana was not saying directly. She was homeless or close to it, surviving on whatever day, labor, or temporary work she could find, while trying to rebuild her life in a city where she had no connections. "What kind of photography did you do at the gallery?" Tyler asked, genuinely curious, and hoping to move their conversation toward something that might restore some of Diana's sense of professional identity. Diana's face brightened slightly, the first genuine expression of interest Tyler had seen from her. "I specialized in documentary photography," she said. "Community portraits, really. People in their own environments, showing the dignity and beauty that exists in places where others might only see struggle." Tyler felt something stir in his chest. Recognition of kindred perspective. Diana was someone who had trained herself to see value where others might see only problems. That sounds like important work, Tyler said honestly. It was important to me. Diana agreed. But the business side of art is complicated. Sometimes people who control gallery access have different priorities than the artists whose work they represent. Again, Tyler heard carefully neutral language that suggested experiences more painful than professional disappointment, but he respected Diana's choice to maintain privacy about whatever had driven her from Seattle to Portland, with apparently nothing but the clothes she wore. They finished breakfast with conversation that moved carefully around the sharp edges of both their circumstances, finding common ground in observations about Portland's neighborhoods, appreciation for the Pacific Northwest's natural beauty, despite its challenging weather, and shared understanding that sometimes survival required day-by-day navigation rather than long-term planning. When Marie brought the check, Tyler paid quickly and casually, as if sharing breakfast with struggling strangers was his normal routine, rather than a decision that meant choosing between heat and electricity for the next week, Diana Tyler said as they prepared to leave. I know this might sound presumptuous, but I work construction when weather permits, and I hear about opportunities for temporary work fairly regularly. If you would be comfortable giving me a way to contact you, I could let you know if I hear about anything that might be useful. Diana stared at Tyler for a long moment, and Tyler could see her weighing the risks of accepting ongoing contact from someone she had met an hour ago against the possibility that he might genuinely be able to help her find more stable employment. I do not have a permanent phone number right now, Diana said carefully, but I usually check for messages at the community center on Southeast Division around 5 o'clock most evenings. If you wanted to leave word there, I would get it eventually. Tyler nodded. Understanding that Diana was offering him a way to help, while maintaining the anonymity and independence that probably felt essential to her sense of safety. I will definitely keep you in mind if I hear about anything, Tyler promised. As they walked toward the diner exit, Diana stopped and looked at Tyler directly. Tyler, why did you do this? Buy me breakfast, I mean. You do not know me at all. Tyler considered his answer carefully, thinking about Emma asleep in their small apartment, about Sarah, who had taught him that kindness was not optional when you witnessed other people's pain about the months after her death, when strangers' small gestures had meant the difference between hope and complete despair. Because I know what it is like to need help, Tyler said honestly. And because my daughter is 8 years old, and I want her to grow up in a world where people notice when others are struggling and choose to do something about it. Diana's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling when she thanked him and walked out into the November storm. Tyler sat in his truck in the diner parking lot for several minutes after Diana disappeared, his heart pounding with the recognition that he had just spent money he could not afford on someone he did not know for reasons he could not entirely explain. The rational part of his mind catalogued all the ways this decision would complicate his week. Emma's school lunch account would have to wait another few days. The electric bill would definitely be late, and he would need to find additional work immediately to compensate for this morning's generosity. But a larger part of Tyler felt something he had not experienced in months, the satisfaction of choosing compassion over self-protection, connection over isolation. For 45 minutes he had been Tyler Brooks, who helped people, rather than Tyler Brooks, who barely survived from paycheck to paycheck. He had been the man Sarah married, rather than the man grief had carved out of her absence. Tyler drove home to their small apartment where Emma was still asleep on her fold-out couch, brown hair spread across her pillow and small hands clutching the stuffed elephant she had owned since birth. 8 years old, and already more resilient than most adults Tyler knew, adapting to their reduced circumstances with grace that broke his heart and inspired him daily. Emma stirred as Tyler moved quietly through their shared living space, her eyes opening with the immediate alertness of children who have learned to monitor their environment for signs of whether today would be good or difficult. "Morning, Dad," Emma said, stretching and sitting up with practiced efficiency. How was breakfast? It was interesting, Tyler said honestly, sitting on the edge of her couch bed. I met someone who needed help, and I was able to help her. Emma's face brightened with interest. What kind of help? The kind where someone was hungry and I had food to share, Tyler explained. That is a good kind of help, Emma declared with 8-year-old certainty. Mommy always said sharing food was like sharing sunshine. Tyler felt his throat tighten with familiar grief, mixed with gratitude for the wisdom Sarah had embedded in their daughter before her death. Emma had internalized lessons about kindness and generosity that sustained her even when their circumstances made generosity feel financially impossible. Mommy was right about sharing sunshine. Tyler agreed, pulling Emma into the morning hug that had become their most important daily ritual. Are you ready to get some sunshine started for today? As Tyler helped Emma prepare for school and got himself ready for another day of seeking construction work that might not exist, he found himself thinking about Diana. Where was she staying? Had she found shelter from the storm? Did she have access to other meals, or had breakfast at Murphy's Diner been an isolated moment of nutrition in a pattern of hunger and uncertainty? Tyler realized he was invested in Diana's well-being in ways that surprised him with their intensity. It was not romantic interest exactly, though Diana was clearly beautiful despite her obvious exhaustion. It was something more fundamental recognition of shared humanity's empathy for someone navigating challenges that Tyler understood intimately. Hope that his small gesture might be part of whatever support system would eventually allow Diana to rebuild her life. But Tyler also knew he could not save Diana. He could barely save himself and Emma from the financial pressures that threatened to overwhelm them weekly. Whatever help he could offer would need to be within the narrow margins of their own survival. Small gestures that did not compromise Emma's security, while still honoring Sarah's teachings about noticing when people needed kindness. Tyler dropped Emma at school and spent the day seeking work that materialized sporadically and never paid enough to provide genuine security. He thought about Diana periodically throughout the day, wondering whether their paths would cross again and whether he would be able to identify other small ways to help if opportunities presented themselves. That evening, Tyler found himself driving past the community center on Southeast Division around 5 o'clock, telling himself he was simply exploring a part of Portland he did not know well, rather than checking on Diana's welfare. But when he saw her emerging from the building, he pulled over and rolled down his window. Diana, Tyler called out, and she turned with the kind of wariness that came from weeks of being approached by strangers with unknown intentions. Diana said, her wariness shifting to something that might have been relief when she recognized him. What brings you to this neighborhood? I was in the area, and remembered you mentioned checking for messages here, Tyler said honestly. I wanted to follow up on something, actually. Tyler had spent the afternoon making phone calls to contractors he had worked with, previously asking about opportunities for temporary workers with flexible schedules who might be interested in non-traditional assignments. He had not found construction work for Diana, but he had discovered something potentially better. Marie at Murphy's Diner mentioned they might need someone to help with kitchen prep and dishwashing. Tyler said. It would not be full-time initially, but it might be steady enough to provide some income consistency. Diana stared at Tyler like he had performed magic rather than made a few strategic phone calls. You called about work for me, Diana asked, her voice carrying disbelief and something that might have been hope. I made some inquiries. Tyler confirmed. Marie said if you were interested, you could talk to her tomorrow morning around 9. She would want to meet you and discuss what the position might involve, but she seemed genuinely interested in finding reliable help. Tyler watched Diana process this information, saw her weigh what this opportunity might mean for her immediate circumstances and longer-term stability. Tyler, Diana said quietly, I do not understand why you are helping me. We are complete strangers. Tyler thought about Emma's wisdom regarding sunshine, about Sarah's teachings regarding moral obligations to notice suffering, and respond to it about his own recent experience of needing help and finding too little of it available. "Maybe because we do not have to be strangers," Tyler said. "Maybe because Portland is supposed to be the kind of city where people help each other. Maybe because I have learned that small kindnesses matter more than we realize when we are the ones offering them." Diana nodded slowly, tears forming in her eyes but not falling. "Thank you," she said simply. "I will talk to Marie tomorrow morning." Tyler gave Diana his phone number, written on a scrap of paper, encouraging her to call if she needed anything else, or if the conversation with Marie did not go well. As he drove away from the community center, Tyler felt the same complicated satisfaction he had experienced at Murphy's Diner. The recognition that he had chosen compassion over self-protection, despite circumstances that made generosity feel risky. 3 days later, Tyler received a text message from Diana. "Got the job. Start Monday. Thank you for believing someone would hire me." Tyler smiled, feeling something loosen in his chest that he had not realized was tight. Diana was not his responsibility, and her employment did not solve any of Tyler's own financial pressures. But her text message confirmed that small acts of kindness could create ripple effects larger than their original scope possibilities that justified the risk of caring about someone whose story was still largely unknown to him. Tyler showed Emma the text message that evening over their dinner of spaghetti with sauce from a jar, the kind of simple meal that had become their standard when grocery money was limited. "That is really good news," Emma said, reading Diana's message with 8-year-old seriousness. "It means she can buy her own food now instead of being hungry. It also means she will have a safe, warm place to work during the day." Tyler added, "Which is important when someone does not have a permanent place to live." Emma considered this information thoughtfully, twirling spaghetti around her fork with concentration. "Dad," Emma said eventually, "do you think Diana has any friends in Portland?" "I do not think so, sweetheart. She moved here recently from Seattle, and she has not mentioned anyone else." "That is sad," Emma declared. "Everyone needs friends, especially when they are starting over in a new place." Tyler agreed with Emma's assessment, but he was not sure what either of them could do about Diana's social isolation beyond the employment assistance he had already provided. 2 weeks after Diana started working at Murphy's Diner, Tyler decided to have breakfast there on a Saturday morning when Emma was spending the weekend with Mrs. Chen, their neighbor, who had become Emma's honorary grandmother and Tyler's most reliable childcare resource. Tyler told himself he was simply returning to his previous routine rather than checking on Diana's adjustment to her new job, but he was pleased to see her working efficiently behind the counter, wearing Murphy's Diner uniform and moving with the confidence of someone who belonged in that environment. Diana called out when she noticed him settling into his usual booth. "It is good to see you." Diana approached his table during a lull in breakfast service, coffee pot in hand, and expression genuinely happy in a way Tyler had not seen during their previous interactions. "How is the job working out?" Tyler asked. "It is perfect," Diana said, her voice warm with gratitude and satisfaction. "Marie has been incredibly patient, while I learned the systems and the other staff members have been welcoming." "Tyler, I cannot thank you enough for connecting me with this opportunity." Tyler felt pleased by Diana's obvious contentment, but also curious about aspects of her situation that remained unclear. "Have you been able to find more stable housing?" Tyler asked carefully, not wanting to pry, but genuinely concerned about Diana's living situation. Diana's expression became more guarded, suggesting this remained a challenging area. "I am working on it," Diana said diplomatically. "It turns out that finding affordable housing without references or employment history is complicated, but I am making progress." Tyler understood that Diana was probably staying in temporary shelters or other transitional arrangements that provided safety, but not stability or privacy. Tyler said, making a decision that surprised him with its spontaneity. My daughter Emma and I live in a small apartment, but we have a couch that folds out into a bed. If you ever need a safe place to stay for a night or two while you are sorting out more permanent arrangements, you would be welcome." Diana stared at Tyler with an expression he could not read. "Tyler, that is incredibly generous, but I could not impose on you and Emma like that." "It would not be imposition," Tyler said honestly. "Emma has been asking about you, wondering whether you have friends in Portland and whether you need any other kinds of help. She would probably enjoy having someone else around occasionally." Tyler paused, then decided to offer complete honesty about his motivations. "And frankly, Diana, I know what it is like to feel isolated and overwhelmed when you are trying to rebuild your life after everything falls apart. If I can provide a safe place to rest occasionally, it seems like a small thing that might make a big difference." Diana's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling when she thanked Tyler and promised to keep his offer in mind. 3 weeks later, Diana called Tyler at 8 o'clock on a Tuesday evening, her voice tight with exhaustion and stress. "Tyler, I am so sorry to bother you, but I am wondering whether your offer of a place to stay for a night might still be available. The shelter I have been using is full tonight, and I do not have anywhere else that feels safe." Tyler did not hesitate. "Of course. Can you get to our address, or do you need a ride?" Tyler picked Diana up at the bus stop closest to their apartment, finding her waiting with a small backpack that appeared to contain everything she owned. She looked tired, but clean, wearing Murphy's diner uniform and carrying herself with dignity, despite obviously difficult circumstances. Emma was waiting in their apartment doorway when Tyler and Diana arrived, wearing pajamas and an expression of excitement about having a guest that made Tyler's heart swell with pride for his daughter's natural hospitality. "You must be Diana," Emma said, extending her hand with 8-year-old formality. "I am Emma Brooks, and I am very glad to meet you finally." "I am glad to meet you too, Emma," Diana replied, shaking Emma's hand seriously. "Your father has told me wonderful things about you. He told me wonderful things about you too," Emma said, "especially about how you are really good at photography and seeing beautiful things even when other people might not notice them." Tyler watched Diana's face transform with surprise and something that looked like relief. Tyler had apparently described her in ways that emphasized her professional abilities and artistic perspective, rather than her current circumstances or need for assistance. "Thank you for letting me stay tonight," Diana said to Emma. "I promise I will not be any trouble." "It is not trouble," Emma declared. "It is just sharing like sharing sunshine. Plus, I have been hoping I could ask you some questions about taking pictures, if that would be okay." Over the next hour, Tyler watched Emma and Diana form an immediate connection based on shared interest in creative expression and Emma's genuine curiosity about artistic processes. Diana examined Emma's school art projects with professional attention, offering technical suggestions and encouragement that made Emma glow with pride and excitement. "You have a really good eye for composition," Diana told Emma after reviewing her drawings and a few photographs Emma had taken with a disposable camera. "Have you ever used a real camera with adjustable settings?" Emma shook her head, clearly fascinated by the possibility. Diana pulled a professional camera from her backpack, expensive-looking equipment that seemed inconsistent with her current financial circumstances, but explained her confidence in discussing artistic techniques. "This camera is probably too advanced for starting out," Diana said, showing Emma the various controls and settings. "But the principles are the same as any camera. It is all about learning to see light and shadow, learning to notice interesting details, learning to frame moments that tell stories." Tyler watched Emma absorb Diana's instruction with focused attention, asking intelligent questions about aperture and shutter speed and focal length. Within an hour, Emma was taking photographs around their small apartment, with Diana's guidance experimenting with different angles and lighting conditions. Tyler found himself observing this interaction with growing appreciation for Diana's natural teaching abilities and Emma's artistic responsiveness. They worked together with easy collaboration, Diana patient and encouraging, while Emma stretched her creative boundaries under expert guidance. As Emma's bedtime approached and they prepared the fold-out couch for Diana's use, Tyler realized he felt something he had not experienced since Sarah's death: the comfortable satisfaction of having another adult in their home who cared about Emma's development and happiness. "Thank you for this," Diana said quietly, as Tyler provided her with clean towels and wished her good night. "Not just for the place to stay, but for including me in your family evening rather than treating me like an obligation or charity case." "You are not either of those things," Tyler said honestly. "You are someone who is rebuilding her life after difficult circumstances, and Emma and I are happy to help however we can." Diana stayed for 2 nights, participating in their morning and evening routines with ease that suggested she was accustomed to family life, even if she had been without it recently. She helped Emma with homework, sharing photography knowledge that enhanced Emma's school art project significantly. She contributed to grocery costs despite Tyler's protests, insisting that accepting hospitality gracefully required reciprocal generosity when possible. When Diana returned to her transitional housing arrangement, Tyler realized their apartment felt emptier than it had before her visit. Not because Diana had been disruptive or demanding, but because her presence had reminded Tyler and Emma what family life felt like when shared among more than 2 people. Emma mentioned Diana frequently over the following weeks, asking whether they might invite her for dinner or whether she might teach Emma more photography techniques. Tyler began stopping by Murphy's Diner more regularly, telling himself he was simply maintaining his previous breakfast routine, but actually checking on Diana's well-being and providing social connection for someone who remained isolated in Portland, despite her employment stability. Their friendship developed gradually, built on repeated small interactions that demonstrated mutual respect and genuine concern for each other's welfare. Tyler learned that Diana had studied fine arts photography at the University of Washington, that she had exhibited her work in several Seattle galleries before the complications with her business partner forced her departure, that she missed creative work more than the financial security her previous life had provided. Diana learned that Tyler had trained as a carpenter before Sarah's illness redirected his career toward higher-paying construction work, that he had built most of the furniture in their apartment himself during better financial times, that his greatest fear was failing to provide Emma with the stability and opportunities she deserved, despite his love for her being absolute and unconditional. 6 weeks after Diana's first overnight stay, Tyler invited her for Thanksgiving dinner, explaining that their celebration would be simple, but that Emma had specifically requested Diana's presence. "Emma wants to show you her photography portfolio," Tyler said, extending the invitation during one of his Saturday morning breakfast visits to Murphy's Diner. "She has been practicing techniques you taught her, and I think you would be impressed by her progress." Tyler paused, then decided to acknowledge what their friendship had begun to mean to him personally. "Also, Diana, Emma and I would genuinely enjoy having you join us. Thanksgiving has been difficult since Sarah died, but this year it feels like we might have reasons for gratitude that extend beyond just surviving until the next holiday." Diana accepted Tyler's invitation with obvious pleasure, offering to contribute to their meal preparation and asking whether there were family traditions she should know about in order to participate appropriately. The Thanksgiving they shared exceeded Tyler's expectations in every dimension. Diana arrived with ingredients for a dessert recipe her grandmother had taught her, contributing to their meal in ways that felt collaborative rather than obligatory. Emma presented her photography portfolio with pride and confidence, displaying images that showed genuine artistic development under Diana's tutelage. Tyler prepared the kind of feast that had been financially impossible for several years, spending money he could not quite afford, because the occasion felt worthy of investment rather than mere survival. But more importantly, their Thanksgiving felt like family celebration rather than two people attempting to recreate traditions designed for larger gatherings. Diana fit into their routines with ease, contributing to conversation and food preparation and cleanup with natural grace. Emma bloomed under the attention of two adults who were genuinely interested in her thoughts and experiences. Tyler rediscovered what it meant to plan special occasions for people he cared about, rather than simply enduring holidays that reminded him of previous losses. After Emma went to bed, Tyler and Diana sat in his living room with tea and leftover pie, talking about their histories and their hopes, with the kind of honest intimacy that develops between people who have shared difficult experiences and found mutual support. Tyler. Diana said, "Eventually, I need to tell you something that I have not told anyone since I arrived in Portland." Tyler waited, recognizing the tone that preceded important personal disclosure. "The complications I mentioned with my business partner in Seattle," Diana continued slowly, "were more serious than professional disagreement." Tyler maintained attentive silence, allowing Diana to proceed at her own pace. "Marcus Reed was my romantic partner, as well as my business collaborator," Diana said. "We had been together for 2 years, and I thought we were building something permanent together. But I discovered that he had been systematically selling my work under his own name, claiming credit for photographs I had created, and keeping all the financial benefits." Tyler felt anger building in his chest on Diana's behalf, but he kept his expression neutral to avoid interrupting her narrative. "When I confronted Marcus about the theft, he said that my name was not well known enough to generate significant sales, that he was actually helping my career by associating my work with his established reputation. He said I should be grateful for the opportunities he was providing, rather than complaining about credit and payment." Diana's voice became stronger as she continued, anger overriding shame in her account of Marcus's betrayal. "When I said I would expose his fraud publicly, Marcus threatened me. He said he had connections throughout the Seattle art community that could ensure I never worked as a photographer again. He said I was dependent on him for housing and income, and that if I chose to make trouble, I would find myself with nothing." Tyler stared at Diana, understanding dawning like ice water in his veins. "You left Seattle because he was threatening you. I left Seattle because I realized Marcus was correct about my dependence on him and that staying would require accepting permanent exploitation," Diana said quietly. "I had been living in his apartment showing my work exclusively through his gallery, allowing him to manage all my professional relationships. When I finally understood what he had been doing, I also understood that I had given him the power to destroy my career and my life if I challenged him." Tyler felt protective anger, unlike anything he had experienced since Emma's birth. "Diana, what Marcus did was not just theft. It was coercion and financial abuse." "I know that now," Diana agreed. "But Tyler, I also know that I allowed it to happen by being too trusting, by not maintaining independent professional relationships, by not protecting myself adequately." Tyler reached across the space between their chairs and took Diana's hand, feeling the need to offer physical comfort alongside emotional support. "Diana, you were not responsible for someone else's decision to exploit your trust and steal your work. Being naive about people's capacity for deception is not the same as being complicit in their crimes." Diana squeezed Tyler's hand, tears forming in her eyes but not falling. "Thank you for saying that. I have been carrying so much shame about allowing myself to become so vulnerable to someone who ultimately cared nothing about my well-being." "You survived," Tyler said firmly. "You recognized a dangerous situation and had the courage to leave, even when leaving meant giving up everything you had built in Seattle." Diana, that took incredible strength. They sat together in Tyler's living room, holding hands and processing the significance of Diana's disclosure until Diana felt steady enough to continue. Tyler, there is something else you should know. Marcus has been trying to locate me since I left Seattle. He has contacted mutual friends called galleries, where I have shown work previously, even hired someone to search for me online. I think he is worried that I will expose his fraud publicly or file legal charges against him. Tyler felt cold settle in his stomach. Is Diana in current danger from Marcus's search efforts? I do not think he would hurt me physically, Diana said, though her voice suggested less certainty than her words indicated. But I am concerned that he might try to sabotage any new professional opportunities I develop, or that he might spread lies about me that would make it difficult for me to rebuild my career. Tyler considered this information carefully, thinking about Diana's employment at Murphy's Diner, her social isolation in Portland, her dependence on temporary housing arrangements that provided safety but not legal protection. Diana, have you considered filing formal charges against Marcus for theft and fraud? I have considered it, Diana admitted. But, Tyler, I do not have documentation for most of the stolen work. Marcus was careful about maintaining legal ownership of anything that generated significant income. A court case would be my word against his, and he has resources and connections that I lack completely. Tyler nodded, understanding Diana's practical assessment of her limited options for seeking legal redress. What can I do to help you feel safer while you are rebuilding your life here? Tyler asked. You are already doing it, Diana said, her voice warm with gratitude. You have given me friendship and professional support, and safe place to stay when I needed it. Tyler, you have reminded me that there are people who help each other without expecting anything in return. Tyler felt something shift in his chest. Recognition that his feelings for Diana extended beyond concern for her well-being into territory that felt romantic, despite his conscious efforts to maintain appropriate boundaries. Diana, Tyler said carefully, I want you to know that you are welcome in our home anytime for any length of time, regardless of your housing situation or employment circumstances. Emma and I both care about you, and we want you to feel like you have family support in Portland. Diana stared at Tyler, and Tyler saw surprise, and something that looked like hope flickering in her expression. Tyler, are you saying that you would want me to move in with you and Emma permanently? Tyler felt his heart pound as he realized he was approaching a conversation that could change all their lives. I am saying that I care about you, Diana. As a friend, as someone I admire and respect, and as someone I have feelings for that extend beyond friendship. I am saying that Emma has already accepted you as part of our family, and that I would like to explore whether you might feel the same way about us. Diana's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling when she leaned across the space between their chairs and kissed Tyler softly. I have feelings for you too, Diana whispered against Tyler's lips. Both of you. I love Emma like she was my own daughter, and I love you in ways that scare me because I thought I had learned not to trust romantic feelings. Tyler kissed Diana again, longer this time, tasting possibility and hope and the promise of building something together rather than simply surviving separately. Then let's build something together, Tyler said when they separated. Let's see what happens when two people who have learned to be careful allow themselves to hope for more than just safety. Diana moved in with Tyler and Emma the following week, bringing her camera equipment and photography portfolio and enough personal belongings to fill the space that had been waiting for her since Thanksgiving. Emma helped Diana organize the closet they would share, chattering excitedly about family activities they could plan together, and photography techniques Diana could teach her. Tyler watched Diana settle into their home with the satisfaction that comes from making decisions that align perfectly with both practical needs and emotional desires. Diana's employment at Murphy's Diner provided income stability that reduced household financial pressure, while her presence provided Emma with female guidance and Tyler with partnership that made daily life feel manageable rather than overwhelming. But more importantly, Diana's integration into their family felt natural rather than forced, collaborative, rather than dependent. She contributed to household responsibilities according to her abilities and resources. She participated in Emma's education and development as a step-parent rather than a guest. She and Tyler shared decision-making about finances and schedules and plans with the mutual respect that characterized healthy adult partnerships. Over the winter months that followed Diana's move into their apartment, Tyler rediscovered what it meant to be part of a team rather than a single parent carrying impossible responsibilities alone. Diana's photography skills enhanced Emma's artistic development, while her professional experience provided models for creative career possibilities Emma had never considered. Diana's income contribution allowed Tyler to be more selective about construction projects, accepting work that paid well rather than simply accepting any work available. And Tyler's stable housing and emotional support allowed Diana to begin rebuilding her professional reputation, gradually taking freelance photography assignments that would establish her credibility in Portland's artistic community without exposing her to the kind of exploitation she had experienced with Marcus. 6 months after Diana moved in with Tyler and Emma, she received a letter that would change everything. The envelope bore the return address of Whitmore and Associates, a law firm Diana recognized from her childhood as the legal representation for her family's estate matters. Inside was a formal letter requesting Diana's presence at a meeting to discuss important matters regarding her inheritance and future financial security. Diana stared at the letter for several minutes, her face cycling through expressions Tyler could not interpret. "Diana," Tyler said gently, "what is it?" "It is from my uncle's law firm," Diana replied, her voice hollow with surprise and dread. "Robert Whitmore wants to meet with me about my inheritance." Tyler felt confusion override concern. Diana had never mentioned family members or inheritance during their months of sharing personal histories. "Diana, I did not realize you had family in the Pacific Northwest." "I do not exactly," Diana said, her expression growing complicated. "Robert Whitmore is my father's older brother, but we have not spoken in almost 2 years. He manages my father's estate, but accessing my inheritance has been complicated because of conditions my father included in his will." Tyler waited for Diana to provide additional information about what appeared to be a complex family situation she had not previously disclosed. Diana said slowly, "I need to tell you something about my background that I have not told anyone since arriving in Portland. Something that might change how you think about me and our relationship." Tyler felt alarm build in his chest, but he kept his voice gentle and encouraging. "Diana, whatever you need to tell me, we will figure it out together." Diana took a shaky breath and looked Tyler directly in the eyes. "My father was wealthy, Tyler. Very wealthy. When he died, he left me a substantial inheritance, but accessing it requires meeting certain conditions he specified in his will. Conditions that my Uncle Robert has been monitoring for the past several years." Tyler stared at Diana, trying to reconcile this information with everything he knew about her financial circumstances and recent history. "Diana, if you have access to significant inheritance, why have you been working at Murphy's Diner and staying in temporary housing?" "Because the inheritance conditions include requirements about demonstrating financial responsibility, stable employment, and appropriate personal relationships," Diana explained. "Robert has been waiting for me to meet his standards for maturity and judgment before releasing control of the trust fund." Tyler felt pieces of Diana's story beginning to reorganize themselves into a different pattern. "The complications with Marcus in Seattle," Tyler said slowly. "Those affected your access to inheritance as well as your career." "Marcus knew about my family's wealth," Diana confirmed. "I think he saw our relationship as an opportunity to gain access to significant money once I met the inheritance conditions. When I discovered his theft and threatened to expose him, he contacted Robert directly." Tyler felt his breath catch as understanding crystallized. Marcus told your uncle that you were making poor decisions about your personal and professional relationships. He told Robert that I was unstable financially, irresponsible, and involved with people who were exploiting my naivety for their own benefit," Diana said bitterly. Ironically, Marcus was describing himself, but Robert believed him because it confirmed his existing concerns about my independence and judgment. Tyler sat in their living room, processing the magnitude of what Diana was revealing. She was not just a struggling photographer who had fled an abusive relationship. She was the heir to significant wealth who had lost access to her inheritance because of lies told by the man who had been exploiting her professionally and personally. Diana Tyler said carefully, "What does this letter from Robert mean? Why does he want to meet with you now?" "I do not know," Diana admitted. "But Tyler, I think he knows about our relationship. I think he knows where I have been living and working for the past 8 months, and I am concerned that he disapproves of my choices in ways that could affect my inheritance permanently." Tyler felt protective anger building alongside concern for Diana's emotional well-being. "Diana, what exactly were the conditions your father included in his will? The inheritance is held in trust until I turn 30 or demonstrate financial stability, professional success, and appropriate judgment in personal relationships," Diana recited. "Robert has significant discretion in determining whether I have met those requirements." Tyler calculated quickly. "Diana, how old are you?" 28, Diana said quietly. "Which means I have 2 years to meet Robert's standards, or the inheritance becomes permanently inaccessible to me." Tyler stared at Diana, understanding the weight of pressure she had been carrying throughout their relationship. She was not just rebuilding her life after exploitation and abuse. She was racing against a deadline that could determine her financial security for the rest of her life. Diana Tyler said slowly, "Are you concerned that our relationship might disqualify you from your inheritance?" "I am concerned that Robert will see my relationship with a single father who works construction as evidence that I am not making appropriate choices about my future," Diana said honestly. "I am concerned that he will view my employment at Murphy's Diner as proof that I lack professional ambition or responsibility." Tyler felt cold settle in his stomach. Diana's uncle might view their relationship as a liability rather than a source of stability and happiness. Diana Tyler said carefully, "What do you want to do about Robert's meeting request?" "I want to face whatever he has to say," Diana said, her voice strengthening with determination. "Tyler, I love you and Emma, and I am not willing to sacrifice our family for money, regardless of how much money it might be." Tyler felt warmth spread through his chest, despite his concerns about the challenges they might face. "Then we will face whatever Robert has to say together," Tyler said firmly. "Diana, I do not care about your inheritance or your uncle's conditions. I care about you and Emma, and the family we have built together." Emma appeared in their living room doorway wearing pajamas and an expression of curiosity about the serious conversation happening between her parents. "Are you guys okay?" Emma asked, settling between Tyler and Diana on their couch. "You both look worried about something." "We are figuring out something complicated," Diana explained, putting her arm around Emma's shoulders. "But we are figuring it out together, which means it will probably be okay." Emma nodded seriously, accepting Diana's explanation while clearly sensing that adult concerns were affecting their family dynamics. "Can I help with whatever it is?" Emma asked. "I am pretty good at figuring out complicated things." Tyler and Diana exchanged a look of shared amazement at Emma's perceptive confidence. "Actually, Emma, you might be able to help," Tyler said. "Diana's uncle wants to meet with us, and we are not sure what he wants to discuss. What do you think we should do when adults want to have meetings about important things? Tell the truth about what we want and why we want it," Emma said immediately. And stick together no matter what, because families are supposed to help each other even when other people do not understand what makes families work. Tyler felt pride swell in his chest. Emma had articulated exactly the approach they needed to take with Robert Whitmore. "You are absolutely right, Emma," Diana said, hugging Emma closer. "Thank you for reminding us what is most important." The next day, Diana called Robert Whitmore's office and scheduled the requested meeting, asking whether Tyler could accompany her and explaining that he was her partner and Emma's father. Robert's assistant confirmed that Tyler's presence would be appropriate for the discussion they needed to have. As they prepared for the meeting that could determine Diana's financial future and potentially challenge their family's stability, Tyler realized he felt something he had not experienced since Sarah's death. Absolute certainty that he was making the right choice by prioritizing love over security, relationship over individual advantage. Diana had chosen their family over her inheritance. Now Tyler and Emma would demonstrate that families protect each other regardless of what external forces might threaten their stability. 1 week later, Tyler, Diana, and Emma, dressed in their best clothes, and drove to Robert Whitmore's law office in downtown Portland, prepared to defend their right to build a family according to their own values rather than someone else's expectations. Tyler had no idea that this meeting would reveal truths more complex than any of them anticipated, or that Diana's inheritance would prove to be not just financially significant, but large enough to change all their lives in ways they had never dared to imagine. The universe, it seemed, was preparing to balance accounts in ways that would prove Tyler's faith in kindness had been justified beyond his wildest hopes. Robert Whitmore's law office occupied 3 floors of a downtown Portland building that screamed expensive legal services. Tyler felt every difference between his construction worker background and this world of corporate power as they rode the elevator to the 20th floor. But Diana's steady presence beside him and Emma's confident excitement about visiting such an important building reminded him that their family's worth was not measured by professional status or financial resources. Diana had been quiet during the drive downtown, processing whatever memories or emotions this return to her family's world had triggered. Tyler respected her need for internal preparation while ensuring that his own presence communicated support rather than anxiety about what they might learn. Emma, meanwhile, had treated the meeting preparation like an adventure, asking detailed questions about office buildings and legal procedures while carefully selecting her most professional outfit for the occasion. Her 8-year-old confidence in their family's ability to handle whatever challenges arose provided perspective that Tyler found both touching and stabilizing. Robert Whitmore's receptionist directed them to a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered panoramic views of Portland's skyline and surrounding mountains. The room was designed to impress with furniture that looked like museum pieces and artwork that Tyler suspected cost more than most people's annual salaries. Robert Whitmore himself appeared 5 minutes after their arrival, entering the conference room with the kind of presence that comes from decades of being the most important person in most rooms. Tall, silver-haired, impeccably dressed in a suit that probably cost more than Tyler's monthly rent, he projected authority and control with every movement. Diana Roberts said, his voice carefully neutral as he approached their table. "You look well. Hello, Uncle Robert." Diana replied, her voice polite but distant. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with us." Robert's attention shifted to Tyler and Emma, his expression evaluating rather than welcoming. "You must be Tyler Brooks," Robert said, extending his hand for a handshake that felt like a test of some kind. "And this must be Emma." Emma stood and shook Robert's hand with 8-year-old formality, clearly taking her role as family representative seriously. "It is nice to meet you, Mr. Whitmore," Emma said politely. "Thank you for inviting us to your very tall building." Robert's mouth twitched with what might have been amusement, the first genuine expression Tyler had seen from him. "Please, all of you, sit down." Robert said, settling into his chair at the head of the conference table. Diana, I asked you here because there are matters regarding your inheritance that require immediate attention. Tyler felt Diana tense beside him, and he reached under the table to squeeze her hand reassuringly. What kind of matters? Diana asked, her voice steady, despite the anxiety Tyler could feel radiating from her. Robert opened a folder on the table and pulled out several documents that Tyler could see were legal papers of some kind. 3 weeks ago, Marcus Reed contacted my office, Robert said, his voice carrying disapproval that made Tyler's jaw tighten with protective anger. Tyler felt Diana go completely still beside him, her breathing shallow and controlled. Marcus claimed that you had been living in Portland under false pretenses. Robert continued that you had been misrepresenting your circumstances to people who were unaware of your family background and financial resources. Tyler felt heat rise in his face. Anger at Marcus's continued attempts to sabotage Diana's life, and anger at Robert's apparent willingness to listen to someone who had already proven himself untrustworthy. Uncle Robert, Diana said, her voice carefully controlled. I hope you did not base any decisions about my inheritance on information provided by someone who stole my work and threatened me when I tried to stop him. Robert's expression shifted slightly. Suggestion of surprise or concern. Diana Marcus presented his claims with documentation that suggested serious concerns about your judgment and stability. What kind of documentation? Tyler asked, unable to remain silent when Diana was being attacked by people who had no understanding of her actual circumstances. Robert's attention moved to Tyler with the kind of calculating assessment that made Tyler feel like he was being measured for adequacy. Financial records suggesting that Diana had been living in poverty despite having access to family resources, Robert said evenly. Employment records from Murphy's Diner that suggested underemployment relative to her education and abilities, and personal information suggesting involvement with individuals whose circumstances might indicate opportunistic interest in her family wealth. Tyler stared at Robert Whitmore, understanding that he had just been accused of being a gold digger, despite having no knowledge of Diana's inheritance until 1 week ago. Mr. Whitmore, Tyler said, working to keep his voice level despite the anger building in his chest. I met Diana at Murphy's Diner 8 months ago when she was homeless and desperate. I offered to share my breakfast with her because she looked hungry, not because I had any knowledge of her family background or financial resources. Tyler paused, letting his sincerity register, before continuing. I learned about Diana's inheritance 6 days ago when she received your letter. For 8 months I have been in a relationship with someone I believed was a struggling photographer who needed support while rebuilding her life. Everything I feel for Diana is based on who she is as a person, not what she might inherit from her family. Emma raised her hand like she was in school, clearly feeling that adult conversation required permission to interrupt. Mr. Whitmore, Emma said when Robert nodded. Acknowledgement, may I say something? Of course, Robert replied, and Tyler saw genuine curiosity in his expression. Diana has been living with me and my dad for 6 months, Emma said with 8-year-old seriousness. She helps me with my homework and teaches me about photography and makes really good pancakes on Saturday mornings. She also helps my dad with groceries and rent because she has a job and wants to contribute to our family. Emma paused, collecting her thoughts with the focused attention she brought to all important communications. What I mean is, Diana acts like family, not like someone who is pretending to be family because of money. And my dad acts like someone who loves Diana because she is kind and smart and fun to live with, not because he wants her money that he did not even know about. Tyler felt his chest tighten with pride at Emma's articulate defense of their family's authenticity. Robert stared at Emma for a long moment, and Tyler saw his expression soften in ways that suggested Emma's honesty had surprised him. Emma, that is very helpful information, Robert said carefully. Can you tell me more about how Diana fits into your family life? She fits perfectly, Emma said immediately. She teaches me about art and listens to my stories about school and helps my dad cook dinner, even though he is not very good at cooking. She also makes him laugh more than he used to laugh before she lived with us. Emma looked directly at Robert with 8-year-old confidence in her own observations. I think Diana makes our family better, and I think we make Diana better too, because that is what families are supposed to do for each other. Robert nodded slowly, processing Emma's assessment with the attention he probably gave to complex legal arguments. Diana, Robert said, turning his attention back to his niece, I need to understand your perspective on Marcus Reed's claims. Have you been misrepresenting your circumstances to Tyler? And Emma? Diana's voice was steady when she replied, but Tyler could see the effort it required for her to maintain composure. Uncle Robert, I have never lied to Tyler about anything. I told him that I left Seattle because of complications with my business partner who had been stealing my work and threatening me when I tried to stop him. I told him that I needed employment and housing while I rebuilt my career. I told him that my personal and professional relationships in Seattle had become dangerous and exploitative. Diana paused, her voice growing stronger. What I did not tell Tyler was that my business partner had also contacted my family's legal representation to sabotage my access to inheritance by claiming that I was making irresponsible decisions about my personal relationships. Tyler watched Robert process this information, seeing something that looked like recognition or understanding flicker across his expression. Diana, Robert said carefully, Are you suggesting that Marcus Reed contacted my office in order to damage your inheritance prospects, rather than out of genuine concern for your well-being? I am suggesting that Marcus Reed is someone who exploited me professionally, romantically, and financially for 2 years, Diana said firmly. I am suggesting that his contact with your office represents continued harassment rather than legitimate concern. Diana leaned forward, her voice growing more confident. Uncle Robert, I have been employed steadily for 6 months. I have established stable housing with people who care about my well-being rather than my financial resources. I have been rebuilding my professional reputation through freelance photography work that demonstrates both artistic integrity and business responsibility. Diana gestured toward Tyler and Emma. And I have formed personal relationships based on mutual respect, shared values, and genuine affection rather than opportunistic interest in my family connections. Robert was quiet for several minutes, studying the documents on the table with the expression of someone reconsidering previously held conclusions. Diana, Robert said finally, I owe you an apology. Marcus Reed presented his claims in ways that seemed credible, and I did not investigate their accuracy adequately before allowing them to influence my assessment of your circumstances. Robert looked at Tyler, then at Emma, then back at Diana. It is clear that you have been making exactly the kinds of responsible decisions about employment, housing, and personal relationships that your father hoped you would demonstrate. Tyler felt relief begin to build in his chest, but he sensed that Robert had more to communicate. Which brings me to the reason I asked you here today, Robert continued. Diana, based on my assessment of your current circumstances, I am prepared to release your full inheritance immediately with no additional conditions or restrictions. Tyler felt Diana's hand tighten in his, but he kept his expression neutral, despite the shock of what Robert was suggesting. What does that mean exactly? Diana asked carefully. It means that your father's trust fund will be transferred to your direct control, Robert explained. Diana, your inheritance is substantial enough to provide complete financial security for the rest of your life, as well as opportunities to pursue meaningful work rather than simply employment for survival. Tyler felt the weight of what Robert was suggesting settle over their small family. Diana would no longer need Tyler's modest income or shared apartment. She could afford to live independently, pursue her photography career without financial pressure, build whatever life she chose without the limitations that had shaped their relationship. How substantial? Diana asked quietly. Substantial enough that you could purchase a home, Establish a photography studio, travel for artistic projects, and support charitable causes that matter to you? Robert said carefully. Diana, your father was very successful in his business ventures, and he wanted to ensure that his daughter would never face the kind of financial insecurity that limits life choices. Tyler felt something cold settle in his stomach. Diana was about to become wealthy beyond anything he could provide or understand. Their relationship had been built on mutual support during difficult circumstances, but those circumstances were about to change dramatically for Diana, while remaining exactly the same for Tyler and Emma. But Robert was not finished with his revelations. Diana, there is something else your father included in his estate planning that I think might interest you. Robert continued. He established the possibility of creating a foundation focused on arts education for underserved communities, with you as the founding director if you chose to pursue that opportunity. Diana stared at Robert with surprise that quickly transformed into excitement. What kind of foundation? Diana asked. A foundation that would provide photography and visual arts education to children who would not otherwise have access to high-quality creative instruction, Robert explained. Your father believed that artistic education was essential for child development, but he was aware that many families cannot afford private instruction or equipment. Robert pulled additional documents from his folder. The foundation would have sufficient endowment to establish facilities, hire professional staff, and provide programming at no cost to participating families. You would have complete creative and administrative control over how the foundation operates, what communities it serves, and what educational approaches it employs. Tyler watched Diana process this information, seeing her mind work through the possibilities Robert was describing. This was more than financial security. This was an opportunity to transform her love of photography and teaching into work that could affect hundreds of children's lives. Uncle Robert, Diana said slowly, "This is more than I ever imagined was possible. But I need you to understand something important about my priorities and my plans." Robert waited, clearly prepared to hear whatever conditions Diana might want to negotiate. "I want to accept the inheritance and explore the foundation opportunity," Diana said firmly. "But I am not leaving Portland, and I am not ending my relationship with Tyler and Emma. They are my family now, and any decisions I make about my future will include them as full partners." Tyler felt his heart pound as Diana advocated for their relationship, despite having access to resources that could provide her with independence from anyone else's circumstances. Diana, Robert said carefully, "Are you certain that your feelings for Tyler are not influenced by the support he has provided during a difficult period in your life? Now that you have access to your inheritance, you might find that your emotional needs change as well as your financial situation." Tyler felt exposed and vulnerable, aware that Robert was articulating fears Tyler himself had been carrying since learning about Diana's inheritance. Uncle Robert, Emma interrupted, raising her hand again for permission to speak. Robert nodded clearly, recognizing that Emma had provided valuable perspective earlier in their conversation. "I think you might be confused about why people love each other," Emma said with 8-year-old directness. "Diana does not love me and my dad because we helped her when she needed help. She loves us because we laugh at the same things and like to spend time together and want each other to be happy even when that is hard work." Emma paused, organizing her thoughts with characteristic seriousness. "My mum died when I was 5, and lots of people helped me and my dad after that happened. But I do not love all of those people the way I love Diana. I love Diana because she sees me the way I really am and likes what she sees. That is not about money or help. That is about being family." Tyler felt tears sting his eyes as Emma articulated truths about love and family that he was too overwhelmed to express himself. Robert stared at Emma for a long moment, and Tyler saw something fundamental shift in his expression. "Emma, you are a very wise young lady," Robert said quietly, "and you have helped me understand something important about your family that I had not recognized before." Robert turned his attention back to Diana, but his demeanor had changed completely. "Diana, I think your father would be very proud of the family you have chosen and the stability you have created. Tyler and Emma clearly provide you with emotional support that has nothing to do with financial advantage, and you clearly contribute to their lives in ways that extend far beyond economic resources." Robert gathered the documents on the table and organized them with decisive movements. "I would like to propose something that might address your desire to maintain your family relationships while also pursuing the foundation opportunity," Robert said. Tyler waited, trying to prepare himself for whatever Robert might suggest. "What if the foundation were established here in Portland with Tyler as Director of Community Outreach?" Robert asked. His experience in construction management and his knowledge of local communities would be valuable assets for a foundation focused on serving underserved populations. Tyler felt shock hit him like cold water. Robert was offering him a professional opportunity rather than seeing him as an obstacle to Diana's inheritance, Mr. Whitmore, Tyler said carefully. "I appreciate the suggestion, but I do not have experience in non-profit management or arts education administration. But you have experience in project management, community relationships, and identifying families who would benefit from additional resources," Robert replied. "Tyler, you recognized Diana's potential when she was homeless and desperate. That kind of insight is exactly what a community outreach director would need." Robert looked at Emma, then back at Tyler and Diana. "The foundation would require someone who understands how to build trust with families who might be skeptical of programs that seem too good to be true. Someone who knows the difference between charity that humiliates and support that empowers. Someone who has personal experience with both needing help and providing help." Tyler felt possibility opening in his chest, the recognition that Robert was offering him meaningful work rather than make work created to accommodate Diana's personal relationships. What would be expected of a director of community outreach? Tyler asked. Building relationships with schools, community centers, and family service organizations that could identify children who would benefit from arts education programming. Robert explained. Developing intake processes that respect family dignity while ensuring programming reaches the children who need it most. Managing logistics for equipment distribution, transportation assistance, and follow-up support. Robert paused, studying Tyler's expression. Tyler, this would be a real job, with real responsibilities and competitive compensation. Diana would need a partner in foundation management, not just support for her personal vision. Diana reached for Tyler's hand, her eyes shining with excitement about possibilities neither of them had imagined an hour ago. Diana said softly, "We could build this together. Your understanding of what families need, and my understanding of arts education. We could create programs that actually change children's lives." Emma raised her hand again, clearly feeling that this conversation required her input as well. "Does this mean Diana gets to teach photography to lots of kids instead of just me?" Emma asked. "It means Diana would teach photography to hundreds of kids, including you," Robert confirmed. "And it means your father would help make sure those kids' families felt comfortable and supported throughout the process." Emma grinned with 8-year-old satisfaction. "I think that sounds perfect," Emma announced. "Diana is really good at teaching photography, and Dad is really good at helping people feel safe about trying new things." Tyler looked at Diana, then at Robert, then at Emma, and felt something settle in his chest that he had not experienced since Sarah's death. Not just security, but purpose. Not just survival, but the opportunity to build something meaningful. Mr. Whitmore, Tyler said carefully, "If Diana wants to pursue this foundation opportunity, and if you believe I could contribute effectively to its mission, then I would be honored to work with her on something that could help families like ours." Robert smiled the first genuine warmth Tyler had seen from him. "Excellent," Robert said. "Diana, are you prepared to accept your inheritance and explore foundation development?" "I am," Diana said firmly. "But Uncle Robert, I want to be clear about something. I am accepting this opportunity as Diana Brooks Tyler's partner and Emma's stepmother, not as Diana Whitmore returning to family wealth. This foundation will reflect the values Tyler and Emma and I share, not expectations about how people with money should behave." Robert nodded slowly, understanding that Diana was establishing boundaries about family identity and social class that would shape how she approached her inheritance. "Diana Brooks." "It is," Robert agreed. "And Diana, I think your father would be pleased that his daughter is choosing to use family resources to build bridges rather than walls." 3 months later, Tyler stood in the middle of an abandoned warehouse that was being transformed into the most beautiful educational space he had ever seen. Construction crews worked around him, installing skylights that would flood Diana's photography studios with natural light-building classroom spaces with the kind of storage and display areas that made creative work feel important rather than messy. Diana's inheritance had turned out to be more substantial than even Robert had initially indicated. Not just comfortable wealth, but generational wealth, sufficient to establish a foundation endowment that could operate permanently without additional fundraising. Diana could have chosen to live without working, travel the world, collect art, pursue any lifestyle her imagination could conceive. Instead, she had chosen to convert an industrial building into a community arts center that would serve 300 children annually while employing 12 professional staff members, including Tyler, as Director of Community Outreach, with a salary higher than anything he had earned in construction. Tyler watched Diana consult with contractors about photographic darkroom specifications. Her confidence and expertise transforming her from someone who had been homeless 8 months ago to someone who commanded respect from professionals who built spaces for wealthy clients. She knew exactly what she wanted the foundation to achieve, exactly how the physical space should support educational programming, exactly what kind of staffing and budget would be required to operate at the highest professional standards. But Tyler also watched Diana check with Emma about the height of work tables, consult with Mrs. Chen from their apartment building about multilingual signage, discuss transportation options with Marie from Murphy's Diner, whose customers included many families who might benefit from foundation programming. Diana was building something that reflected the community where she had rebuilt her life, not just the economic class she had inherited. Emma had become the foundation's unofficial junior consultant, testing equipment for age appropriateness and providing input about what kinds of programming would appeal to children from different backgrounds. At 8 years old, Emma could explain the difference between cameras that intimidated beginning photographers and cameras that invited experimentation. She could demonstrate activities that felt like fun rather than like school. She could identify potential problems with foundation programming from a child's perspective that adult staff members might miss completely. Tyler had discovered that community outreach work suited his skills and temperament perfectly. His construction management background translated directly to coordinating complex projects with multiple stakeholders and deadlines. His experience as a single parent helped him communicate with families who needed support without wanting to feel like charity cases. His understanding of economic pressure and social isolation allowed him to build relationships with families who might otherwise feel suspicious of programs that seemed too good to be true. Most importantly, Tyler had found professional purpose that aligned with his personal values. He was helping to create opportunities for children whose families faced the same kinds of limitations he and Emma had experienced before Diana changed their lives. Every family he enrolled in foundation programming represented his conviction that small acts of kindness could create enormous positive change when supported by adequate resources and genuine commitment. Diana appeared beside Tyler in the construction zone wearing work boots and carrying architectural plans, looking every inch the professional foundation director she had become. "The dark rooms will be finished by next week," Diana said, her voice warm with satisfaction. "And the community garden Emma designed should be planted by the end of the month." Tyler smiled, remembering Emma's insistence. That foundation programming should include outdoor photography education focused on nature and growth, as well as studio work focused on technical skills. "How many applications have we received for the first round of programming?" Tyler asked. 437, Diana replied, "for 120 available slots." Tyler felt pride and concern simultaneously. The foundation was clearly meeting a community need that exceeded their capacity to address immediately. "Robert thinks we should consider expanding programming to serve more children," Diana continued. "The endowment can support larger operations if we decide that growth makes sense." "What do you think?" Tyler asked, trusting Diana's judgment about educational programming while valuing her partnership in all foundation decisions. "I think we should focus on doing exceptional work with 120 children before we worry about serving 437 children adequately," Diana said thoughtfully. Tyler: "I want families to know that foundation programming will provide the kind of individual attention and professional instruction that wealthy families pay thousands of dollars to access privately." Tyler nodded, understanding that Diana was committed to excellence rather than just expanded access. "Besides," Diana added with a smile, "Robert has been researching replication models that could establish similar foundations in other communities rather than requiring our foundation to serve everyone who applies." Tyler felt excitement build in his chest. Diana's foundation could become a template for community arts education that influenced hundreds of other organizations rather than just serving hundreds of individual children. Emma appeared at Tyler's elbow wearing the junior contractor hard hat Diana had given her for foundation site visits. "Dad, Diana, come see the community garden space," Emma said urgently. "The greenhouse arrived this morning, and it is even better than we thought it would be." Tyler and Diana followed Emma through the construction zone to the outdoor area that would serve as foundation programming space during good weather. Workers were assembling a greenhouse structure that would allow year-round educational programming focused on the intersection of photography and agriculture, teaching children to document plant growth cycles while learning about nutrition and environmental responsibility. "It is perfect," Emma declared, arms spread wide with 8-year-old satisfaction. "Kids can take pictures of vegetables growing and learn about where food comes from and help their families start gardens at home." Tyler watched Emma's excitement about foundation programming and felt gratitude that overwhelmed him periodically, since Diana's inheritance had changed all their lives. Emma was growing up understanding that adults who had resources used them to create opportunities for children who needed additional support. She was learning that work could be motivated by purpose rather than just financial survival. She was developing artistic skills and social awareness that would shape her entire approach to adult responsibility. But most importantly, Emma was growing up in a family where love had been tested by significant change and proven to be based on authentic affection rather than circumstantial convenience. Diana's access to wealth had not changed Emma's place in Diana's heart, or Diana's commitment to their family relationships. If anything, Diana's financial independence had allowed her to choose Tyler and Emma more completely without any economic pressure to maintain relationships that provided housing or income security. Tyler's phone buzzed with a text message from Robert Whitmore. "Foundation inspection scheduled for next week. Board of Directors wants to review programming before official opening." "Are you prepared?" Tyler showed the message to Diana, who grinned with confidence that had replaced the uncertainty she had carried when they first met. "We are definitely prepared," Diana said. Tyler, we have created something that your Sarah would have been proud of, and my father would have admired. We have built a foundation that reflects the best values both of us learned from the people who loved us. Tyler felt warmth spread through his chest as Diana referenced Sarah in ways that honored his first marriage rather than competing with it. Diana understood that Tyler's capacity to love her and Emma had been shaped by Sarah's example, and that building their future together required respecting rather than replacing the foundation Sarah had provided. As they walked through the completed sections of foundation facilities, Tyler reflected on the journey that had brought them from Murphy's Diner to this moment of professional and personal fulfillment. 9 months ago, he had been a struggling single father who shared his breakfast with a homeless stranger because kindness was the only wealth he possessed. Now he was married to that stranger, directing community outreach for a foundation that would influence hundreds of children's lives, raising Emma in a family where love and meaningful work reinforced each other daily. The universe, it seemed, kept excellent records of debts and credits. And love, Tyler had learned, always earned compound interest when invested wisely in other people's welfare. That evening, Tyler found Diana in their new apartment, a space 3 times larger than their previous home, with natural light that made Diana's photography work possible, and separate bedrooms for everyone who needed privacy, while maintaining common areas that encouraged family time together. Diana was sorting through portfolio materials at their kitchen table, selecting student work samples that would demonstrate foundation programming effectiveness to the board of directors Robert was bringing for next week's inspection. "How was your day?" Diana asked, as Tyler settled beside her, reviewing photographs that showed 8- and 9-year-old children's artistic development over 3 months of foundation instruction. "Productive," Tyler replied honestly. "I enrolled 6 new families for fall programming, including the Rodriguez family, whose twins have been wanting to participate since we opened, but were concerned about transportation logistics." Diana smiled, understanding that Tyler's success in community outreach was measured not just in enrollment numbers, but in his ability to problem-solve barriers that prevented interested families from accessing foundation resources. Mrs. Rodriguez asked whether Emma might be interested in serving as a peer mentor for new students. Tyler continued. "Apparently, her daughters have seen Emma's photography work at school and think she could help them feel more confident about trying advanced techniques." "I think Emma would love that responsibility," Diana said warmly. "She has been asking about ways to contribute more significantly to foundation programming." Tyler watched Diana organize student portfolios with the professional efficiency she brought to all foundation work and felt amazement that still surprised him with its intensity. This woman who sorted children's artwork with such care and expertise had been homeless less than 1 year ago. Her artistic knowledge and educational insights had been buried beneath economic desperation and social isolation that made her invisible to everyone except Tyler, who had recognized her value when she had nothing to offer, except her authentic self. Diana, Tyler said quietly, "Do you ever think about how different things might have been if we had not met at Murphy's Diner?" All the time, Diana admitted, looking up from her work. "Tyler, if you had not shared your breakfast with me that morning, I would probably still be sleeping in shelters and working temporary jobs and hiding from Marcus's attempts to track me down." Diana reached across the table and took Tyler's hand, her engagement ring catching light from their kitchen lamp. "But more than that," she continued, "if you had not seen me as someone worth helping rather than someone to avoid, I would never have learned that I could be loved for who I am rather than what I could provide, or how little trouble I caused." Tyler squeezed Diana's hand, thinking about the scared, desperate woman who had stumbled into Murphy's Diner during a November storm, and the confident, purposeful foundation director she had become through love and support and opportunities to use her talents meaningfully. "I have been thinking about something Emma said during our meeting with Robert," Tyler said. "About families being people who want each other to be happy, even when that requires hard work." Diana nodded, remembering Emma's 8-year-old wisdom that had helped convince Robert of their family's authenticity. Emma understood something about our family that I did not recognize until recently. Tyler continued. We did not fall in love despite our difficult circumstances. We fell in love because of how we supported each other through difficult circumstances. Diana stared at Tyler, recognizing the truth in his observation. Tyler, when I was living with Marcus in Seattle, he told me constantly that love should be easy, that relationships that required effort were signs of incompatibility. But what Emma helped me understand is that love is not about finding someone who makes life easy. Love is about finding someone who makes hard work feel meaningful. Tyler felt something settle in his chest. Recognition that their relationship had been tested by poverty, isolation, inheritance, professional opportunities, and family complications, and had emerged stronger rather than weaker from every challenge. Diana, Tyler said, reaching into his pocket for the small box he had been carrying for 2 weeks. I have something I want to ask you. Diana's breath caught as Tyler opened the box to reveal a simple ring that he had designed himself and commissioned from a local jeweler, using techniques he had learned in woodworking adapted to metalwork. The ring was not expensive by the standards Diana could now afford, but it was beautiful in ways that reflected Tyler's understanding of what Diana valued: clean lines, natural materials, craftsmanship, that prioritized meaning over cost. Diana Brooks. Tyler said, his voice steady, despite the emotion that threatened to overwhelm him. You have made me and Emma happier than we dared to hope we could be after Sarah died. You have shown us what it means to build a family based on choice rather than obligation, partnership rather than dependence, shared purpose rather than just shared circumstances. Tyler paused, looking directly into Diana's eyes. Will you marry me? Will you be Emma's stepmother officially and my partner in everything we build together for the rest of our lives? Yes, Diana whispered, tears streaming down her face, but smiling with joy that transformed her entire expression. Yes, Tyler. Yes, to all of it. Tyler slipped the ring onto Diana's finger, then pulled her into a kiss that tasted like promises and possibility, and the deep satisfaction that comes from choosing love over safety, partnership over independence, shared dreams over individual achievement. From the living room, Emma's voice called out with 8-year-old excitement. Are you guys getting married now? Because I heard Diana crying happy tears, and that usually means something really good just happened. Tyler and Diana broke apart laughing, recognizing that their family's most important moments always included Emma's perspective and enthusiasm. We are getting married, Diana called back to Emma. How do you feel about that? Emma appeared in the kitchen doorway, wearing pajamas and an expression of pure satisfaction. I feel like we get to have a party where everyone knows we are a family instead of just us knowing it, Emma declared. And I feel like Mommy Sarah would be really happy that you found each other and chose to take care of each other the way families are supposed to do. Tyler felt his throat tighten with emotion as Emma referenced Sarah in ways that honored her memory while celebrating their new family configuration. I think you are absolutely right about Mommy Sarah being happy, Tyler agreed, pulling Emma into a hug that included Diana. And I think she would be proud of the family we have built together. They stood in their kitchen, 3 people who had found each other through loss and kindness and mutual recognition of shared values, planning a wedding that would celebrate not just romantic love, but the formation of a family committed to using their resources and opportunities to help other families access the support they deserved. 6 months later, on the first anniversary of the morning Tyler had shared his breakfast with Diana at Murphy's Diner, they gathered in the Foundation Community Garden for a wedding that reflected everything they had learned about love, family, and community during their year of building life together. The guest list included Mrs. Chen from their apartment building, Marie from Murphy's Diner with her guitar for wedding music, Robert Whitmore, who had become not just Diana's advocate, but Tyler and Emma's honorary grandfather. Dr. Sarah Williams, who was principal of Roosevelt Elementary, where Emma attended school and foundation programming, was beginning to influence academic achievement, and dozens of foundation families whose children had already begun to demonstrate the confidence and creativity that arts education could provide. Emma served as both flower girl and ring bearer, wearing a yellow dress she had chosen specifically because it matched the sunflowers growing in their garden. She took her ceremonial responsibilities seriously, while also providing running commentary about the beauty of outdoor weddings and the importance of celebrating love with flowers and music and food shared among friends. Diana wore a simple white dress that allowed freedom of movement for garden celebration, her hair adorned with wildflowers that Emma and Mrs. Chen had gathered that morning. She carried a bouquet of vegetables and herbs from their foundation garden, symbolic of growth and nourishment, and the community they were committed to serving together. Tyler wore his best suit with a boutonniere made from foundation garden produce, standing beneath an arch that Emma had designed using branches from their apple trees and fabric banners created by foundation students as their contribution to the celebration. Robert Whitmore officiated, having obtained ordination credentials specifically for the occasion because Diana had asked him to take responsibility for making their family official rather than hiring someone who did not understand their history and values. The vows they exchanged reflected their journey from strangers to family, while acknowledging their commitment to using their partnership to create opportunities for others. Tyler promised to choose Diana daily to support her artistic vision and professional goals to raise Emma with wisdom, rather than just love to use whatever privileges and resources they accumulated to build bridges rather than walls between their family and their community. Diana promised to see Tyler clearly always to help raise Emma with both guidance and freedom, to build the foundation with integrity rather than ego, to honor Sarah's memory by living fully rather than safely. Together they promised to demonstrate for Emma that love multiplies rather than divides when shared generously, that families have obligations to help other families flourish, that meaningful work emerges from the intersection of personal talents and community needs. The reception featured food donated by local restaurants, whose owners had become foundation supporters, music provided by Marie's acoustic guitar, and foundation students who had been learning about rhythm and melody as components of artistic expression, and toasts from community members whose lives had been affected by foundation programming in ways that extended beyond individual children's artistic development. Robert Whitmore announced during the reception that the Oregon Department of Education had adopted the Whitmore Foundation model as a template for statewide arts education programming, with state funding allocated for teacher training programs and curriculum packages that would allow every Oregon school district to access foundation-quality arts instruction. Tyler and Diana's local foundation would influence thousands of children throughout the state, rather than just hundreds of children in Portland neighborhoods. Their marriage was not just the union of two people, but the expansion of their capacity to effect positive change through partnership rather than individual effort. As the evening celebration continued with children playing games Emma had invented and adults sharing stories about community connections that foundation programming had created, Tyler reflected on the transformation of his life since that November morning when he had chosen compassion over self-protection. He had offered breakfast to a desperate stranger because kindness was the only wealth he possessed. 1 year later, he was married to that stranger, directing community outreach for a statewide education initiative, raising Emma in a family where love and meaningful work reinforced each other daily, surrounded by community members who understood that individual success meant nothing without collective flourishing. The universe had balanced accounts in ways that proved Tyler's faith in kindness had been justified beyond his wildest imagination. But more importantly, Tyler had learned that love was indeed like sunshine. When shared generously, it created warmth enough for everyone without diminishing its source. As Tyler and Diana danced their first dance as married partners in the foundation garden, where Emma's design had created beauty from soil and seeds, Tyler felt Sarah's presence like a whisper of approval rather than a shadow of loss. He had honored her memory by choosing love over fear, partnership over isolation, purpose over mere survival. And as Emma joined their dance with 8-year-old confidence in her place within their family, Tyler knew that the story of their beginning was really the story of how individual acts of kindness could grow into legacies of love that influenced generations. 2 years after their wedding, Tyler stood before an audience of 300 educators. Policymakers and community advocates gathered at Portland State University's 5th Annual Conference on Community-Based Arts Education. In the front row, Diana and Emma listened with pride as Tyler delivered the keynote address about foundation programming that now served 12,000 children directly while influencing 38,000 additional students through educator training programs in 12 states. The foundation had become a model for community arts education that demonstrated how individual organizations could achieve sustainable impact through partnerships with educational institutions, government agencies, and grassroots community groups. Portland State University was launching a graduate program in community arts education administered by the Whitmore Foundation in partnership with the university's education department. Construction had begun on the Whitmore Center for Community Arts Education, a combined foundation headquarters, university teaching facility, and research center that would include gallery space for displaying foundation student work alongside professional artists whose careers had been influenced by community arts programming they had received as children. But Tyler's address focused less on programmatic achievements than on philosophical principles that made their work successful across diverse communities and demographic groups. Foundation programming works, Tyler told the conference audience, not because we provide expensive equipment or prestigious instruction, but because we approach children and families with the same respect and attention that we would want our own children to receive. Tyler paused, making eye contact with educators throughout the auditorium. We work because we remember that every child has artistic potential that deserves development, that every family has wisdom about their own needs and priorities, that every community has assets that can be mobilized to support children's growth when those assets are recognized and valued rather than overlooked or dismissed. Tyler's voice strengthened as he shared insights that had emerged from 4 years of foundation programming. But mostly we work because we understand that arts education is not about creating professional artists. Arts education is about helping children develop confidence in their own perspectives, skills for creative problem-solving, and understanding that their voices and visions matter in the world they are inheriting. The audience erupted in applause that continued for several minutes. Recognition that Tyler had articulated values that guided effective community programming, regardless of specific artistic disciplines or demographic focus. During the question and answer period that followed his address, a young woman from rural Oregon asked about replicating foundation programming in communities that lacked urban resources and institutional partnerships. The most important resource for community arts education is not money or equipment, Tyler replied. The most important resource is adults who believe that children's creative potential deserves cultivation and who are willing to advocate persistently for programming that serves children's actual interests rather than adult assumptions about what children need. Tyler looked at Emma, now 13 and preparing for high school, while serving as a foundation peer mentor for younger children. My daughter taught me something important when she was 8 years old. Tyler continued. She said that foundation programming works because adults remember what it felt like to discover they were good at something unexpected, and they want to create that experience of discovery for other children. Emma stood up in the front row, clearly feeling that her father's reference to her younger self required current commentary. I think foundation programming works, Emma said, with 13-year-old confidence, because adults remember that being creative makes people happy, and they figure out ways to help other people access that happiness instead of keeping it to themselves. The audience laughed and applauded Emma's insight, recognizing wisdom that transcended her age and experience. After the conference concluded with commitments from 6 additional states to develop community arts programming based on foundation models, Tyler and Diana hosted an evening celebration in their foundation garden. 50 guests, including Marie, Mrs. Chen, Robert Whitmore, Dr. Williams, and dozens of foundation families gathered under string lights to toast 5 years of programming that had influenced 50,000 children throughout the Pacific Northwest. Emma, now confident in her role as foundation family representative, offered a toast that surprised even Tyler and Diana with its insight. "I want to thank everyone for celebrating with us tonight," Emma said, raising her glass of sparkling cider. "But I also want to say something about why foundation programming matters not just for the kids who participate, but for everyone who supports it." Emma paused, organizing her thoughts with the same focus she brought to photography composition. 5 years ago, my dad offered breakfast to a stranger because he thought kindness was important, even when money was scarce. Tonight, hundreds of families have opportunities for their children because that stranger turned out to be someone who knew how to turn kindness into programs that help lots of families access what their children deserve. Emma looked directly at Tyler and Diana, her eyes shining with affection and pride. "What I learned from watching my family is that love is like sunshine. It gets bigger when you share it instead of smaller. And I think foundation programming works because it helps families discover their own sunshine and then teaches them how to share it with other families." The garden fell silent as guests absorbed Emma's metaphor recognition that she had articulated the foundation's mission more clearly than any mission statement or program description could achieve. Robert Whitmore raised his glass, his voice warm with emotion that had replaced the formal distance he had maintained during his first meeting with Tyler and Emma. "To sunshine that gets bigger when you share it," Robert said, "and to families that help other families discover their own sunshine." Everyone raised their glasses, toasting not just foundation achievements, but the principle that individual kindness could grow into community transformation when supported by adequate resources and sustained commitment. As the celebration continued with music and storytelling and children's laughter echoing through the garden they had designed together, Tyler felt deep satisfaction that came not from personal success, but from contributing to something larger than his own family's welfare. He had learned that love was indeed renewable energy. When invested wisely in other people's potential, it generated returns that benefited everyone rather than depleting the source. 10 years after that November morning when Tyler Brooks had shared his breakfast with a desperate stranger at Murphy's Diner, their family gathered in the same garden for a different kind of celebration. Emma was 18 and preparing for her first semester at Portland State University. Joining their anniversary tradition were 2 new family members who had become part of their chosen family through circumstances that proved love and loss often intertwined in ways that created unexpected beauty. Marcus was 8 years old, the son of Diana's former colleague from Seattle, who had died 6 months earlier, leaving Marcus without living relatives and facing foster care placement until Diana and Tyler had requested guardianship. Marcus had inherited his mother's artistic eye and his own unique perspective on color and composition that made his photography distinctive despite his young age. Sophia was 6 years old, a foster child who had joined their family 3 months earlier when what was supposed to be a temporary placement had become permanent due to the sibling-like bond that had formed immediately between Sophia and Marcus, and the recognition that their family had space and resources to provide both children with stability they needed. Sophia's birth mother had died from complications related to substance abuse, but Sophia spoke about her mama with love rather than resentment, often drawing pictures that included a woman with purple hair who lived in heaven and watched over Sophia's new family with approval. Emma had created a photography display that documented their family's growth over 10 years, comparing portraits from Murphy's Diner in 2013 with recent images of Tyler, Diana, Emma, Marcus, and Sophia harvesting vegetables in their foundation garden. The visual narrative showed not just individual growth, but the expansion of their capacity to include additional people who needed family rather than just biological connections. Mrs. Chen, now 82 and still Emma's honorary grandmother, asked Tyler and Diana about the transition from parenting one child to parenting 3 children who spanned elementary through college age groups. "Some days are overwhelming," Tyler admitted honestly. "Emma needs college preparation support, while Marcus needs grief counseling as he processes his mother's death, and Sophia needs help understanding that this placement is permanent and she will not be moved again." But Tyler's expression brightened as he continued. "Most days it feels like what families do. We support each other through challenges while creating space for everyone to grow into whoever they are meant to become. Marcus and Sophia have brought energy and perspective that make our family better, just like Emma and Diana made our family better when they joined us." Diana nodded, watching Marcus teach Sophia how to adjust camera settings, while Emma provided patient guidance about composition and lighting. "The foundation influence has grown beyond what we imagined possible when we started," Diana said. "But the family influence has grown in ways that are even more meaningful. We have learned that love multiplies when shared generously rather than conserved carefully." Robert Whitmore, now 78, and considering retirement from active law practice to focus on foundation board service, asked about their plans for formal adoption procedures for Marcus and Sophia. "The legal processes are complex because both children have different circumstances and requirements," Tyler explained. "But emotionally, they are already our children. Marcus and Sophia know that our family is their permanent home, regardless of what paperwork eventually gets filed." As the evening continued with the comfortable rituals that had developed over 10 years of anniversary celebrations, Emma reflected aloud about the family's evolution from Tyler and 8-year-old Emma to the 5-person household that now included 3 generations and multiple perspectives on creativity, community service, and mutual support. "I think the reason our family works is that we grew by adding people who needed family rather than by planning expansion strategically," Emma observed. "Marcus and Sophia joined us because they needed somewhere safe and loving to grow up, not because we decided to have more children according to some schedule." Emma looked at her parents and her siblings with 18-year-old wisdom about family dynamics. "And I think that is how love is supposed to work. It responds to people who need it rather than waiting for perfect circumstances or ideal timing." Tyler felt pride swell in his chest as he listened to Emma articulate insights about love and family that had taken him decades to understand. Marcus, who had been quietly listening to adult conversation while practicing photography techniques, looked up from his camera with 8-year-old seriousness. "Is it true that you gave Diana breakfast when she did not have money for food?" Marcus asked Tyler. "It is true," Tyler confirmed. "Diana was homeless and hungry, and I had more food than I could finish, so I asked her to share my meal." Marcus considered this information thoughtfully. "That was a good choice," Marcus declared, "because now Diana is part of our family, and she teaches kids about photography, and she helps Sophia and me feel safe when we miss our mums." Sophia, who had been drawing in her sketchbook while listening to family conversation, looked up with 6-year-old curiosity. "Tyler, do you think my mama would like our family?" Sophia asked. "I think your mama would love our family," Tyler said gently. "And I think she would be proud of how well you are taking care of your own heart while helping Marcus take care of his heart, too." Sophia nodded solemnly, returning to her drawing with satisfaction. As their 10th anniversary celebration wound down and Tyler helped Diana clean up, while Emma supervised Marcus and Sophia's bedtime routines, Tyler reflected on the journey that had brought their family from desperate circumstances to abundant life. He had offered breakfast to a homeless stranger, because Sarah had taught him that kindness was not optional when witnessing other people's suffering. 10 years later, he was part of a family that included 3 children who understood their own power to create beauty and meaning in the world, married to a woman who shared his commitment to using privilege to lift others, surrounded by chosen family who celebrated their collective ability to influence positive change in their community. Tyler had learned that individual acts of kindness created ripple effects that extended far beyond their original scope when supported by adequate resources and sustained commitment. But more importantly, he had learned that love was indeed like sunshine. When shared generously, it generated energy sufficient for illuminating everyone it touched without diminishing its source. The universe Tyler knew kept excellent records of debts and credits, and love, he had discovered, always earned compound interest when invested wisely in other people's potential for growth and contribution. As Tyler turned off the garden lights and joined his family in the home they had built together through choice and commitment rather than accident and obligation, he felt deep gratitude for the November storm that had driven Diana into Murphy's Diner 10 years earlier. That storm had changed everything. It had transformed Tyler from a struggling single father into a husband and foundation director whose work influenced thousands of children's lives. It had transformed Diana from a desperate refugee into a confident educator whose expertise shaped statewide policy. It had provided Emma with siblings and extended family who supported her growth into a young adult who understood her responsibility to contribute to community welfare. Most importantly, that storm had demonstrated that broken pieces could become foundations for something more beautiful than anything that had existed before the breaking occurred. Tyler's story was not unique. Everyday individuals chose kindness over convenience, connection over self-protection, possibility over fear. Everyday small acts of love grew into legacies that influenced generations. But Tyler's story proved that those choices mattered, that individual courage created collective transformation, that families built through love and commitment could change the world, one breakfast, one foundation, one child at a time. The universe kept excellent records. And love. Tyler had learned always wins in the end. If this story touched your heart the way it touched mine, if it reminded you that kindness is never wasted and love always multiplies when shared, please don't just watch and walk away. Hit that subscribe button to join our channel family, where every story reminds you that hope is real and second chances are always possible. Share this video with someone who needs to remember that their acts of kindness matter more than they know. And tell us in the comments about a time when someone's unexpected kindness changed your life, because your story matters too. Remember, in a world that can feel cold and disconnected, you have the power to be someone else's miracle. Thanks for watching, and until next time, keep sharing your sunshine with others who need its warmth.